My name is Eric Benari, and this is Games People Play. In this episode, we will discuss the most common game played between spouses called If It Weren't For You. Mrs. Whitman complained that her husband severely restricted her social activities so that she never learned to dance. Due to changes in her attitude that she had learned during psychiatric treatment, her husband became less sure of himself and more indulgent. Mrs. White then was free to enlarge the scope of her activities. She signed up for dancing classes and then suddenly discovered to her despair she had a morbid fear of being on a dance floor and had to abandon the project. This unfortunate adventure, along with similar ones, laid bare some important aspects of the structure of her marriage. Out of her many suitors, she had picked a domineering man for a husband. She was then in a position to complain that she could do all sorts of things if it weren't for you. Many of her women friends also had domineering husbands, and when they met for their morning coffee, they had a good time spent playing if it weren't for him. As it turns out, though, however, contrary to her complaints, her husband was performing a very real service to her by forbidding her to do something that she was deeply afraid of and by preventing her, in fact, from even becoming aware of her fears. This was one reason that her inner child had shrewdly chose such a husband. But there was more to it than that. His prohibitions and her complaints frequently led to quarrels, so that their sex life was seriously impaired. And because of his feelings of guilt, he frequently brought her gifts which might not otherwise have been so forthcoming. Certainly, when he gave her more freedom, his gifts diminished in lavishness and frequency. She and her husband had little in common besides their household worries and the children, so that their quarrels stood out as important events. It was mainly on these occasions that they had anything but the most casual of conversations. At any rate, her married life had proved one thing to her that she had always maintained, that all men were mean and tyrannical. Tyrannical men. As it turns out, this attitude was related to some daydreams of being sexually abused, which had plagued her in her early years. The basic fact is that by marrying Mr. and Mrs. Whitman, have gained the opportunity to communicate with each other, and such an opportunity may be called social contact. The fact that they use this opportunity makes their household a social aggregation, as contrasted with the New York subway train, for example, where people are in spatial contact but rarely avail themselves to the opportunity and so form of dissocial aggregation. The influence the Whitmans exert on each other's behavior and responses constitutes social action. The antithesis of the game, if it wasn't for you, is permissiveness. As long as the husband is prohibitive, the game can proceed. If instead of saying, "Don't you dare," he says, "Go ahead," the underlying phobias are unmasked, and the wife can no longer turn on him, as demonstrated in Mrs. Whitman's case. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next game that we will play.